Hello, one and all. I'm Bill Davis, and on behalf of the entire Office Hours team, I get to say welcome to Post-Eggnog Recovery Day. This is the day after Christmas in the U.S., and this is always where we answer your tech questions every day. We're going to get right to those questions. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada is our reader today. Alexander, what do we have on tap?
First question this morning is from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What's the secret to having a good video and audio experience with NDI on multiple PCs, Mac Minis, iPhones, and Android phones on a Ubiquiti Unify network?
And there's a link there of some sort to dive in more. Guy Cochran's going to start us off this morning with some answers for you. Guy?
Hey, good morning. Happy post-Christmas. Good question there, Paul. I have a Ubiquiti network, and one of the things that I've noticed is there's some new switches that have come out. So I have some of their older ones and some of their newer ones. If you can carve out a VLAN specifically for NDI, that's really the way to go. And on these new switches, there's actually an NDI profile. So it's specific for NDI, Dante. They have some SDV over IP. There's different profiles now, and they're kind of mimicking what the guys over at Netgear with the M4250 line have been doing by creating these profiles and making it a little bit easier for people to just click. And that's what Unify is known for, simplicity. And so being able to just click on this profile, assign it to that port. So all those computers that you want to have that'll be doing AV over IP or NDI or Dante can get that profile applied very quickly. And then once you've applied it, the other nice thing to do with multiple devices is to have an NDI discovery server. So that's basically just a small little app that's included with NDI tools. And what it does is it basically registers all your NDI devices. So I have it running on a couple older machines, and it just sits there and it just listens for sources to pop up, and it registers in the database. And so now when you open up something like vMix or OBS or whatever you're using to cut your show, those sources appear just like super fast. Otherwise, they don't appear very quickly because of the way that MDNS works and the way that devices are discovered and registered. So if you really want a snappy network, then I would use an NDI discovery server. Now, I noticed that your link also led to the HX camera, which a lot of people will use that just wirelessly, and it will work wirelessly, but it's all dependent now on your router and your access point and how far away it is, and you're relying on Wi-Fi. So if your phone could accept an Ethernet connection through an adapter, then I would go that route for your NDI HX stuff. And there's also remember that HX is pretty lightweight, so it's not full fat NDI. There's two versions of NDI, and that could be another question if you want to throw one out there about those differences. I don't want to tie up too much time with explaining other stuff going off the rails, but hopefully that helps answer your question.
Jeffrey Powers, what are your thoughts?
So I'll add to that. You don't want to mix and match too much. You don't. If you have, try and get as many of the same iPhone as possible. And if you're going, if you have to do Android and you have to do iPhone, try to get the latest version of everything onto all the phones. If you've got an older phone, you might want to kind of take it out of the mix because it could be the thing that starts messing up the whole system. As for audio, as Guy said, wire up as best as possible. That's the most important thing. But as for audio, designate certain devices to be the audio. If you can't do a single audio source, like for instance, if I was recording a band, I would probably take from the board. That would be the audio source, and I'd let the cameras do the one thing that they're supposed to do, and that's basically record the video. But if you have to have microphones on the cameras so you can capture, designate your primary and your secondary, and then put the audio on those primary devices rather than the secondary, because you don't want to have tons of audio signal coming through as well.
And the chat has some suggestions as well today. If you're not in Mukana, I'll talk about that in just a minute. But for right now, some of the comments, John Wallace says, if you have anything less than their pro switches, you'll have an awful time. And that was after Mickey noted, take the NDI certification courses and get certified. Don't invest in Unified for audio over AV over IP. Invest in good network infrastructure. And go with Cisco Arista or Netgear's M4250. So there's a whole bunch of suggestions among many others. And that brings up the idea of Mukana. If you don't know, we have a chat system that happens in parallel with the show every day. You can put your questions in there, and this live chat takes place while the show is on. So a lot of people share this kind of information in the chat every day during the show. If you want to know how to get there, start out at officehours.global/join, and you can get on the email list, and that'll get you the breadcrumbs to follow these trails into the other things we do here on the show every day. Next question.
This one's from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. What is the panel's thoughts on Shade's take on AI-powered cloud storage specifically for creatives?
And Courtney Gooden's going to start us off this morning. Good morning, Courtney.
I haven't used it, and I just took a look at their website, and I'm not sure how much AI really brings to the table on this. This is a collaboration system for editorial and post-production and media storage, for a NAS type operation or a cloud NAS type operation. I don't know what it brings to the table other than natural language search for semantic search. So you could say, bring up all the clips that have, Tom Johnson in it talking about football. And maybe it will be able to index and organize all the clips that have that character speaking and that person in it. But I think there are other packages out there that already do this. And other than natural language search and indexing, I'm not sure really what the AI brings to the table here. So, but I haven't used it, so it's just looking at their description of it, and I don't know how much it costs. And of course, Blackmagic's cloud service now is tied into a lot of their products. We don't know what kind of products this interfaces with, and what type of editorial packages it's used with.
Let's head on to the next question.
TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm looking for a FAST Thunderbolt 4 or 5 enclosure dock for an NVMe M.2 SSD. I already have the drive, a Samsung 990 Pro 4 terabyte. I just need a great enclosure or dock for it. Price is no object. I want the best, but I will always take a great deal.
Always scary to ask the Office Hours crowd for the best. We're going to turn right back around and go back to Alexander Knight for the answer. Alexander.
I always go to OWC, Otherworldly Computing, which I'm sure, TJ, you know about. Oops, cut to the wrong thing here. They just came out with a new Thunderbolt 5 spec external drive. So if you just need an enclosure that'll do... Sorry, I keep switching to the wrong thing. If you need something that is just going to fit one drive, this one will fit a... Actually, I may be wrong. I don't think this fits an M.2, but this is their new Thunderbolt 5 enclosure that'll do up to 6,000 megabytes per second. So if you have a new MacBook Pro with an M4 chip, this is as close as you're going to get, or to that kind of speed. They also have other M.2 compatible enclosures. So I would look at OWC for that stuff. Also, they have versions of these enclosures that support RAID as well, where you can insert, there's one that has, I think, 4 slots where you can put up to 4 M.2 drives and run them in RAID. So if you need something super fast for editing, I would look at the OWC enclosures.
And they come up a good little bit. We've had their owner on the show talking about things, and I think they're a highly respected organization. And everybody seems to say if you really want top speeds and reliability, they are one of the premier vendors to look at for that sort of stuff. So not a paid commercial, just a lot of us have a lot of OWC gear, and it seems to work. In fact, I'm sitting here in front of 2 Thunderbolt ports and also a mobile one, and they've all worked flawlessly for me. So I think we all feel good about them. Not that they're the only one, but they certainly know their engineering and do it well. Let's go to the next question.
David Brady in New York. I used Mimo Live to record an NDI capture, and the resulting file plays back at double speed with no audio. Media Info sees both audio and video present, so what went wrong, and can it be recovered?
And Guy Cochran's going to help us out with this one. Guy?
Yeah, this might be one where we need to reach out to Oliver and see exactly what the dynamics are behind the scenes. But as far as what we can do to fix it, it sounds like maybe it was recorded at, if it was 30 and 60, for instance, maybe, for instance, you had the camera being recorded at 30, and then the document was set up for 60, or is it the other way around? The way to fix it, though, is to drop it into an app like Final Cut or Premiere and then slow it down to 50% and then re-export it, and that'll fix it. But in the meantime, I'll reach out to Oliver. I know some people are off on the holidays and see what could have happened as far if you could actually let us know in the chat what the sources were and what the document setup was, I can try and replicate it here and see if I can get it to do the exact same thing, because it might just be some metadata flag that somehow interpreted that. Well, it's obvious that that's what happened, but I'm trying to figure out where in the line that it could have occurred.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about Office Hours. We made a lot of friends over the course of the 4+ years, and Oliver Breidenbach, who runs that company that does Mimo, is one of our reasonably close associates, and he shows up in chats and things like that. So you can definitely find a breadcrumb trail to track this down, because I think we know everybody who knows everything about that, as you're hearing from panel expertise plus access to the actual people who run that company. Alexander Knight, you had some thoughts as well?
I agree with what Guy is saying. We probably need a little more information. My first thought when I read this too was checking the document size, because I'm wondering if the frame rate for the actual document, which is basically what you're actually using for that session, how you're recording it, I wonder if that greatly differs from the source that was being captured, and maybe that's where the problem lies. So I would start by looking at the actual settings in there.
Hopefully, David, that gave you some areas to find even better answers with. Let's go one more question. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine, Panama City. Did we watch the NFL Christmas games on Netflix? The show was good, but graphics felt too crowded and non-cohesive. Audio seemed to be slightly out of sync. What are your thoughts?
Let's start with CJ Covell. CJ.
Hey, I didn't see any audio issues per se. I was watching at least the 1 o'clock game, and here's a still of what one of those was looking like. So they just kind of had a rounded or kind of an arced graphic at the bottom, which kind of, I think, was more along the design language of what you see in Netflix, and then the Netflix logo in the middle. But if you pay attention to the interstitials as they're coming in and out of things, it was a lot of CBS ads. And I'm always watching for when does the house ad come on, because I don't like to listen to the commercials at home. So I always, hit a button and then it goes to music at the commercials for the NFL games. And so I'm always watching for when does the house ad come on, because that's my cue that I need to make the audio go in the other direction very soon. So it seems like CBS was on the back end here. And, it's one of those things where they make a special graphics package just for Christmas. And unlike the other graphics package, which is, honed and tuned every single game, they get a chance to look at it and critique it. And they're working on those graphics packages, next year's graphics package is getting worked on this year. They're constantly tweaking that stuff. This is a one-off special, so it's going to be a little bit more. But the biggest takeaway for me was, man, oh man, do I wish that all of the games broadcast in that quality. Whenever I'm watching even on YouTube TV with the Sunday Ticket, when it's not airing in my local market and I get the 1080 feed, it's so nice. But most of the time I'm stuck with 720, and it's just like, yeah. It's when you see that that even people that were over at the house that aren't media people, that aren't looking, pixel peeping, they're like, wow, the video looks really, really good. So I hope that it's kind of an ushering or a wake up call to some of these broadcasters that really got to up your stuff, because people are noticing that you're falling behind.
Courtney Gooden, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we watched both of the Netflix games. The second one, Houston lost horribly. They got 2 points on the scoreboard and 28 points. It was a nightmare. But interesting, we were looking at the graphics. There was this snow sweeper that they had to go to instant replays that just looked like, it would kind of go across like a little flurry of snow going across that would do the wipe to the instant replay. And then the other ones, they'd come out of it with the flying in that would go in and then come back out again to be the sweeper, the Netflix in. But they were very minimal graphics I found on the screen. They did have, of course, the graphics that are stuck to the field, but they were not very, they didn't have a completely new, I didn't see a new Christmas package for those. They were just the standard 1st and 10 and informational infographics that were stuck to stuck to the field. And I did see there were a couple of shots where the key was breaking up. I think they had the second team on here in the broadcast truck. And as for the sound, if you saw the Beyonce halftime show, which was the second game, so they spent a lot of money on Beyonce, obviously, Netflix did. And she starts out coming down the tunnel to the field with a bunch of background singers, and she has a hand mic, and the song is started, and she's singing, and I'm going, well, we can just barely hear her. She sounds like she's buried in the mix of the band and the background singers. I can just barely hear her. And so I start messing. I think, well, maybe the TV's in the wrong mode. And so I pick up the remote and I'm starting to punch around to try and find the settings to change, to find out whether it's in, Dolby Surround, and I've just not a Dolby Surround system, and, to find out what's wrong with the mix. And suddenly it pops on, much louder, and you can hear her a lot better. And then I started looking, and they went to the track. She's lip syncing everything. And so maybe they started out and just lost the wireless mic, her main wireless mic that she's using, and they just went boing to the track and stayed on the track throughout the rest of the halftime show. She was woefully out of sync at points. That's maybe what they're mentioning, where they saw it out of sync. But it could be the streaming that was throwing it out of sync. It's kind of hard to tell, but it seemed like she would be saying words, and her lips wouldn't be moving. So there's that problem. And she was always equally distant from the mic, so I think they used the rehearsal track or the pre-recorded track for her the entire time. And after that fiasco in the tunnel, maybe they didn't have wireless reception in the tunnel because it's isolated. You're in a little Faraday cage coming out there, and so they panicked and went to the track and said, "Don't come back to the wireless until maybe the end if you get a good signal." But yeah, I noticed that that stuck out really hard, and Houston lost. Really.
You're getting down to the serious stuff. Houston lost. I used to do some sports announcing, and I got to say that doing live audio in any kind of stadium circumstances is a nightmare. The slapback echo that I used to have as a sports announcer in a stadium was like a second. And literally your brain starts melting down if you're trying to do something that's going on the PA and it's coming back to you that late. You really have to shut down every mental faculty of listening to the playback and just try to perform without that horrible delay. We didn't get a chance to watch either of the two games. We had people over for Christmas, but we did watch a little bit of the pre-game. And I got to tell you, the thing that bothers me now, and I completely understand why they're doing it, but the internal promo stuff where you're going down for commentary and you're not actually going down to somebody who understands the sport. You're going down to somebody who's the star of another show on Netflix or something like that. It's just really annoying at some point. I understand this. They got eyeballs. They want to promo their products. And having somebody who worked in advertising for many years, I totally get that. But you've got to dial it back at some points. It reminds me now of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, where it's feels like 20% parade and 80% promotion for things on the rest of the network. And I just think there has to be some moderating influence on that. I get the economic drivers, but you got to put on a good show first, and you can't have too long of promotional happy talk before you get to what you've promised the audience that they want to see. In this case, it was probably the game and the stuff leading up to the game, not what's coming up on Amazon next. So it's one of the things we're having to live with. My two cents.
I noticed also the pre-show chatter back and forth, that all came out of a studio in Los Angeles. They were not at the stadium. So
yeah, I agree.
And the commentators were not sports fanatics.
I do think the commentators did a good job, and it was largely more females in the commentary pool than I thought, and I thought they did a really good job of doing a solid keep the show rolling. But it was the promo stuff. It was when they broke away from talking football and interviewing football experts, the players that were there for expert commentary. That's kind of what I wanted to listen to. I wanted to know what their thoughts were of the game. They're players and coaches and people who have been around the game for a long time. You could just assume they're going to have more expertise than somebody who wasn't that familiar with the game. And that's what it seemed like, all of those promotional toss to somebody in the bottom of the stadium who's just talking about the shows coming up. Yeah. Not a big deal for that for me. I did want to mention, too, that if you are interested in getting your questions into the system here at Office Hours, I'm going to toss up the QR code in the bottom thing. You can take a phone or an iPad or anything else that reads QR codes, shoot that. It'll get you directly into the place where you can put your questions in. Try to make them as concise as possible and only one question or topic per submission. We have had occasionally people in the past who try to layer up 4 or 5 questions, and that if that happens, they're probably going to pass you over. But if you have a good, well-formed question, it'll get in the mix. You'll be able to vote on it in the regular Mukana system. So that's the easiest way. Or you can just type in askofficehours.global and get to the same place. Next question.
Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina is asking, a new app called CineMon has been released that purportedly converts an iPad or Mac into a cinema monitor. I'd love to hear your reactions.
Guy Cochran's going to help us understand this a little bit. Guy?
Yeah, it looks cool. These are very helpful when you have cameras like the Red Komodo that have very, very small screens and you need to check focus or get into some of those menu options and check color. Being able to apply LUTs and being able to show somebody that's on set, hey, this is what it's going to look like after the LUT is applied. Now, this model in particular, you're going to need a USB-C device. So it's not like I have an Axon CMO, which does the same thing in hardware. So that you can get an Axon CMO for $74 now. And basically what it does is it'll do Lightning or USB-C and convert it. What I just watched in the video that's linked here is that he recommends just an off-brand or a CamLink USB-C adapter. The trouble with those is that they all vary in color and that you can get some dramatically different results. And so he does show that there's video scopes and things like that. It's just, I wonder how accurate all this is. And you could apply for the public beta. I just did, and to see how accurate this stuff is against the CMO. The CMO is made by Axon. There's a 2K or HD version and a 4K version, and their app has been out for a couple of years now, so it's tried and true, and it also records and can do SRTs. So if you're interested in doing this kind of thing, I've tested the Axon with iPhone 13, 14, iPad Mini, iPad Pro 12.9, and even bought the cage from Axon. So if you're on set and you're doing this kind of stuff, it's nice to have the bigger displays with the long battery of an iPad or an iPad Pro. So look at those ones from Axon if you want to do this right away, or you can apply to the beta and see, kind of roll the dice and see how it all turns out. But I'm excited to see people pushing the limits. If I remember right, this app, there were some DPs talking about this app, and it was going to be almost $100 for the app. So I can buy the hardware for $74 and have a tried and true versus buying an app that costs more than the hardware. So it's up to you, but thanks for bringing it up, and hopefully he'll lower the price and make it more like, I don't know, something reasonable, 50. But I want him to get paid, I want him to keep pushing development, but it's got to beat the Axon.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I'm not sure of if you have an iPad and you're not using an older one, you can definitely press it into use as a monitor. I wonder about the brightness of the monitors. If you're going to be using them outdoors, if they have, 1200 nits or so to fight sunlight and glare, if that's going to be the main downfall, you have to build some kind of hood arrangement around it to keep the glare and the light off of it. Plus, you can get some decent monitors with built-in scopes that are 1200 to 1500 nits for around, half the price of an iPad. So it's not going to save you a lot of money unless you already have, a lot of these hanging around. So it's a good way to press your old iPads into service as a monitor in a pinch to give you something bigger to look at. And with the interface and the software, it'll give you the scopes and the ability to apply a LUT. But I got the Viltrox monitor, which has also an onboard battery that'll run it for many hours and is replaceable so that you don't have to, plug it into the wall or recharge it. You can swap the N-type cells out when one goes dead. And it's, under $400, like $300-something, and it's a 7-inch display. But it's not going to give you that big iPad, look. But when you put a big monitor like that on your camera, if you get close to your talent, you're blocking the sunlight out of their eye.
Having been on a lot of sets, I got to tell you, the reason I want an iPad or an iPhone on the monitor on the set is not because I want to try to replace a Flanders Scientific or something else that's going to be absolutely accurate in terms of color. I'm doing it because I know most of the eyeballs who are going to be watching this thing will be on the Apple managed color pipeline on an iPhone or an iPad. Now, that doesn't mean it's the only one, and I absolutely agree that anybody whose job on a set is color critical evaluation should have a variety of things to look at. I just want to make sure that no work that I do goes out if I haven't checked it on something in the Apple ecosystem, just because it's the largest consumer ecosystem out there. I would hope that if somebody has a big cohort of fans or watchers who are on the Samsung platform, that they use those, because the bottom line is you always want to monitor in whatever your most important consumer target group is going to be seeing this on and make sure it's right there. I do think the Apple system is a little bit easier in terms of the fact that they've created since OS X this managed color pipeline where what you see on one iPad or iPhone should be exactly identical to everything in the entire ecosystem. And so that's useful to me as somebody trying to evaluate what the end user is going to see. But I don't know anything about CineMon. I've never run across them. But I do note that that's kind of my last check stage, because I know who's going to be watching my material and I want to know what they're probably going to see. And to me, that causes me to go get the devices that most people are going to be using to look at it on. Your mileage may vary. Next question.
Another question from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Yesterday, we did a deep dive into waterproof iPhones. I should have specified I need a shallow water solution for video classes in a swim spa using both an iPhone 14 Pro Max and a Samsung S22 Max. You get what you ask for, LOL.
Alexander Knight's going to help you out a little bit with this, Paul.
I just did a quick search on Amazon. So I found a couple of cases, Paul, that claim to be waterproof. I found this one for an iPhone 14 Pro. It claims to be IP68 underwater. Again, I say claim because I've never tested it. And this one says 10 feet for under or for over. Oops, I passed the screen here. 10 feet for 1 hour. So that's goes beyond obviously the requirements that you have. So something like that may work. $25, pretty cheap. Also very inexpensive, around the same price too, from the Spider Case brand for the S22, which also claims to be waterproof. So you may want to look into a couple other things. There's tons of companies on Amazon that make this kind of stuff for these phones. Your mileage may vary with it, of course.
Absolutely. And having played a little bit with this stuff, an IP rating, immersion proof, I guess is what it stands for. They've gotten better. The Apple devices have gotten better. Nothing is perfect. And let's face it, unless you get a purpose-built waterproof case, if you're diving, going down, any kind of depth, you want to protect past that. But most phones, I think, regardless of the manufacturer now, have better IP ratings than they did before. I think that was one of the reasons they stopped drilling those holes for things like headphone ports and things like that, is to protect the interior components from water ingress. So my 2 cents. Oh, Courtney raised a hand on that. Courtney, you want to get back in?
I was just going to say, I don't know why you would even want to use a phone. You're not going to be live streaming from underwater. So a GoPro would be fine for capture underwater. And if you're going to have an instructor, obviously he's not going to be underwater. He's going to be on the surface of the water, perhaps. You could have an instructor with a wireless headset-mounted microphone and a wireless transmitter on his head going to a pool-based speaker. You can buy underwater speakers that you can just drop into the pool, and as we know, sound carries underwater really well. So if people are underwater for some reason, maybe this is a synchronized swimming or something in the swim spa, then they should be able to hear the instructor while they're underwater. But getting a hydrophone, being able to hear people underwater, having people hear you underwater as long as you're not underwater is pretty easy. Otherwise, you're going to have to get hydrophones to record from underwater. And you probably don't want to do that. You could, in a pinch, take a lavalier microphone like this one here, put it in rubber sheath, let's say, some contraceptive unlubricated sheath, and seal it up real good and drop it in the water. That's what we used to do for getting underwater sounds on several movies that are very famous out there. We used ECM50 microphones covered with a rubber membrane and dropped into a wading pool to record all those sounds of sharks and ships crashing into the water, all that underwater sounds.
And thank you, Steve Uroff, in the chat for correcting me. IP is ingress protection, so water ingress, not immersion, but regardless, same idea. Next question.
Lois Richter in Davis, California is asking, in the U.S., this is National Thank You Note Day. Do you find that people today still send actual physical notes or send thanks electronically or by a phone call? Or do they just not bother thanking people? I'm curious how tech changes our culture.
And that's a fascinating question. Thank you for it, Lois. Courtney Gooden's going to start us off this morning. Courtney?
For thank you notes, I get, a phone call or an email sometimes. Probably not a text message because people know I don't text very often and will probably miss it if they send me a thank you text message. And I used to get a lot of Christmas cards, and I noticed in the last couple of years about the only Christmas cards I get are from my, dentist and brokers, and that's about it. Everyone stopped sending snail mail Christmas cards, and they're sending electronic ones or greetings or a whole treatise they've written up on the family with inserted pictures and video that comes via email into the inbox, and that gives you a lot richer multimedia version of keeping up with the Joneses than the old, mimeographed page tucked into a Christmas card that you would get every year.
CJ, your thoughts?
A handwritten note is increasingly rare nowadays, but that's to your advantage. If you want to send one, you can really make an impact. I think the handwritten note still packs a pretty serious punch. And especially now that it's not as common, it's, even more so. So I'm all for the handwritten note.
Harshid.
I just appreciate that you said you've alluded to the National Day for Thank You, but thank you for this question. And I think thank yous are really important altogether. If we have a guest on the show, it's probably best we always say thank you to them because, again, it's a relationship that we're all building together. It doesn't matter where you come from and what part of the world. So it's a universal thing more than even a national thing, I would say, to just be thankful for whoever might give any contributions to your impact, to your message, however you're trying to push your thoughts across. So I think that many different ways are changing. It's more on the electronical side or emails, text, Discord, but still reaching out to whomever that might have helped you just to say a quick thank you, I think is just very impactful just to be showing that you care about what they've given to you.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, it's important, especially if you're in charge of a production, to thank people, especially if they went over the top. And in this industry, a lot of us are getting paid by the day, by the hour, and a simple thank you could mean so much more than that because we could go make money doing something else. And I think a lot of us do these type of productions because of the joy of doing it. And so there's something about a dopamine hit when you get a thank you card, or even if it's verbal or even a Discord message. I always try to send people thank yous through some method, but I have a stack. I mean, I just signed one yesterday. And for those that have worked with me, that I'd stick Amazon gift cards, Starbucks gift cards inside of there. And I'd go so far as to even type them on a manual typewriter just to add even more of an analog feel to it and then sign it. And people are surprised when they get them. I even keep a stack inside of my car in the glove box of these little ones that people can open up, and it does make people smile. And it's just a difference. Sometimes that's the difference between somebody, if they're double booked, they might say, hey, I can go work for that person because they show gratitude and true appreciation. But you got to mean it. I mean, if it's not your nature, then it's not your nature. But think about it, though. Think about the next time somebody does something over the top for you to thank them either digitally or through the analog way. But having a stack of those cards, they're on Amazon, you get all different kinds. I'd suggest having a stack. It is meaningful. And
I have to say, I've been shocked. The last 3 years, our little board near our front door has started populating itself around Christmas time with a tremendous number of thank yous from the young women that live around us. My wife is very social and she likes talking to people, and having raised our kids, she talks to a lot of them. The connection that she's made through that, I think, one or two generations younger group of women who took the time to create family cards, send them out because we know their kids as they're growing up. This is another generation. It really does cement a connection that we otherwise wouldn't have had. It's like this diffuse group of a couple of generations. And, they chat a lot about all the problems that it requires to raise a family in the modern era. And I think it's a tight-knit group, and it's just been really heartwarming for me to see that whole new group of people coming in our local community and gathering together to share information. It's literally another version of what we do here at office hours. I mean, we all gather here every day to share information, to try to help each other, to try to make sure that things that we have figured out and solved don't just stay with us, but go to help other people. And I see that exact same spirit happening with that moms group, for a lack of a better thing. I don't want me to try to be dismissive about it, but that's a tough job. And so all those folks getting together and sharing, this is what works, this is how things get done. I think that's the best of us, and I'm glad that there's local versions of that as well as the national and international versions like what we do here every single day, and trying to share our expertise with anybody who's coming along the next generation. Okay, enough talking. Let's get to the next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama City. I got a mini PC to have OBS built into my flykit instead of a separate laptop. Is it smart to use OBS as the last mile prior to LiveU Solo, or should I input OBS output into the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO?
And Jeffrey Power is going to start us off. Jeffrey?
Okay, I started by asking Eduardo, getting a little bit more information. So basically what he's doing is he's got an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO connected to 2014 Mac Mini racked case, HDMI out to the program and HDMI out to the multi-view. So basically, LiveU is going out, whereas the Extreme is basically doing all the capture and probably the super source and things. He's bringing in SPX graphics, which also add to the complexity of the whole thing. So here's my stance on that. And first of all, the least complex, the better. Whatever gets you to do the show. If you're doing the screens straight to LiveU, then it's not getting recorded on the ISO. So if that is not an issue, then maybe that is the best way to go. But if you need to record the screen, then you're definitely going to need to go through the ISO. But you can also do both if the mini PC is strong enough to actually send signal to two different locations, send it to the Extreme so it can record, and then send it out to LiveU as, if anything, a backup that you can use to send it back and forth. But it also, once again, it also depends on this mini PC, and I'm assuming it's some sort of headless unit because you talked about a laptop. And, of course, you get rid of the screen, keyboard, and mouse when you get into a PC. But you're also gaining, if you've got a good graphics card in there, you're gaining a lot more. So I might be wrong in that. You might have a monitor and mouse attached to that. So, and then the last thing is just watch OBS. It's not always the best thing to stream on. When you're going through the ISO, you're screen scraping, whereas you're going through LiveU. I suppose you would be screen scraping to the LiveU as well. So it's going to be fair on both sides.
Guy Cochran, dive in.
I was trying to jump in the chat there too and follow up with the dialogue going on to see exactly what the workflow here is, and if we can carve out one of these as being a double, like why have another failure point if you don't need it. The LiveU Solo is a great device for bonding things together, and it is a hardware encoder. So it depends on a lot of things here. There was something called LiveCon that YouTube just put out, and in some of those sessions, and I'm going to put a link here in chat, they mentioned and gave the settings for AV1, and in H.265, you'll actually get the VP9 codec. So if you were to go head to head of a LiveU Solo. So this is what I would do. I would go take the LiveU Solo output, run a test on an unlisted stream, and just see what the quality looks like, and then go OBS and see what it looks like. And see if you can appreciate the color. And you could probably take the LiveU Solo completely out of the equation if that mini PC is strong enough and you appreciate the difference in color. I noticed the other day, Saturday's show, or was it Sunday's show, where the color, even in office hours, because it's not the VP9 codec when it passes through Zoom's production studio, it just isn't as rich as the Daily Show because of that VP9 codec. So what's the content? What's the reason why you're embedding something upstream? Is it a graphic, like a score board for sporting? And then could you work around that with the ATEM and then just doing like a key inside of there and eliminating OBS? Because again, where's the failure point? Do you want quality? There's lots of stuff. I'd have to really look at your system, and you might even want just a more powerful mini PC if it comes down to it, because with AV1, so the little mini PC that I have, it's called the ATEM Man from Minis Forum, and it now has the Intel Arc card in it, so I can stream in this new format. There's a beta program. I'll put a link to it. I don't want to go too much into this, but there's a fabulous thing from a session from the folks at YouTube. This is for gaming creators that want the highest quality. So there's exciting stuff coming with low bandwidth, high quality ways of getting into YouTube if you want.
And don't forget, your questions drive this show, particularly your voting. And we actually have quite a few questions in the thing there. So we're going to try to get to as many of them as we can before the end of the show. So just pay attention to that if you can. Remember also that Office Hours is a not-for-profit endeavor here. If you'd like to put in a donation to help us do the work we do every day here, it would be greatly appreciated. Go to officehours.global/donate if you want to be involved in that. Next question.
Robert Linkroom in Belmont Shore, California. Is there a standalone hardware device that can be used in real time that will dumb down my 1080p signal to MP4 at 4 megabits per second? I have a client that needs small files for archiving purposes.
Courtney Gooden, what's your recommendation?
You know what I use a lot is these standalone, they're for gamers, use them a lot. They're HDMI video recorders. They're standalone. They don't record in the computer itself. So it goes on your HDMI output of your computer or whatever signal is you're generating that you want to record that's HDMI 1080p. And they'll record in a 720p MP4 or 1080p MP4 selectable. And the bit rate is usually between 4 or 5 megabits per second, so they're pretty compact files. And you plug a USB thumb drive into them, and it records directly to the USB thumb drive. No computer required. You're not recording on the hard drive in the computer. You end up with MP4 files on the thumb drive. You can send them to people right away, and they're pretty decent quality. I've looked at the MP4 files, and I've done several of my YouTube training videos on those little recorders from ClearClick. So check ClearClick. You can get them on Amazon for around $100 or $69. Depending on whether you want analog in or just HDMI in. And some of them have both analog in if you're using, if you're digitizing old VHS tapes or something, but with HDMI in, they'll record 1080p at about, between 4 and 8 megabits per second. So they're pretty compact files, and they look really good.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, and it also depends on what you have that you are sending out. Like, for instance, what I would normally do if I'm using vMix or Wirecast or anything like that is I would set an HDMI port to be a live external display, a clean feed that would then go to a device. I used to do this with my Blackmagic. Of course, that's not going to give you the 4 megabyte files. That's going to give you high-end 422, 444 type files. But you get something like a Zowie box or what Courtney explained with those other devices. The Zowie box actually has pass-through to it, so you can hook up a monitor so you can see what's being recorded as well. But then you can set that to a 1080p. You can dumb it down, but you can never dumb it up. So if you're starting at 720 and you want to go to 1080, it won't work that way. But if you have 1080 high that you're streaming or recording or whatever, you can then send that as an external monitor to something like the Zowie box or any external monitor from that. That would then allow you to record at lower bit rates, but of course it really depends on the device and what they want to record at bit rates and frame rates, for that matter. Because a lot of these boxes, you can't control a lot of the settings, so you'll definitely get a smaller version of the file, that's for sure, because they want to save as much, like a YOLO box or a Director Mini or anything like that. They want to save as much space as possible so they can get the video. So those are the things that I would add. But of course, you can also do NDI and then NDI it into a computer, which you can also then act as a secondary save point.
Next question.
Patricia Andrea from Jax, Florida, from the QR code is asking, I'm in VoiceOver but want to start recording instructional videos. Please recommend a start guide to learn not just the video portion, but also the fun pop-up things that are added to videos.
You're in a world with lots of options. Guy Cochran's going to help you out a little bit here. Guy?
I'm wondering what kind of instructional videos, because if you're in VoiceOver, you want a great mic. I mean, even at my church, they were using a bass unit Audio-Technica lavalier, and it was just killing me. So I brought in my $550 Countryman head-worn microphone, and it's so smooth, so natural. Everybody noticed a difference. I mean, it's wonderful when you can appreciate good sound and have it just be faded away into the background that people don't go, I can't hear them, or it's too high or too crunchy, or it's just smooth, natural sounding. So I would look at first options from the microphone, then a good wireless if they're going to be moving around in an instructional video. A lot of times you don't want a hardwired cable going on to somebody, especially if they're doing aerobics or some kind of exercise type videos. You want a small, robust transmitter. From there, I really like Luria Pertucci. She's been on the show. She does a lot of stuff for live streamers. Her website's Live Streaming Pros. She's also in the Ecamm forum. So I would look at what some of those guys are doing in the Ecamm forums. They're having a lot of fun just doing little pop-up things. It's a great community to be in. There's like some people that are pretty well known. Seth Godin I've seen in there. Michael Hyatt's in there, and they do these fun little pulling of questions from live YouTube. Actually, Alexander does some of that with Mimo Live as well, where they're pulling in questions live. And so it just depends on the platform, but I'd be looking at Ecamm, Mimo Live, even OBS for free will allow you to insert those kind of surprise and delight type things. It's just watch what other people are doing, see something you like, and then try to duplicate it.
Yeah, this is something that's exploded as the vlogging generation has come on and everybody's doing explainer videos and things like that. There's some standards that the industry looks for. You're probably going to be doing a lot of promotion with inline ads and things like that. So you want a workflow that's pretty efficient and consistent. A lot of us who are on the show here do that kind of work. I do a ton of voiceover work, and I use the same rig I use now. It used to I still have a voiceover booth there, and I used to try to lock myself away to do it, but the technology has gotten so much better and noise reduction has gotten so much better that I'm able to sit in a more comfortable place now and knock out these things. But I've had to add consistently for office hours, added lighting, added a better camera, all the things that make this more professional presentation. And then I just thought, one day I thought to myself, well, if I just run something like QuickTime and capture the video while I'm doing the voiceover work, I do audiobooks and things like that, I have an instant access to little clips and things like that I can use for self-promo. So I think this has developed a lot. The tools are easy. They're accessible. It's really the discipline and techniques, figuring out how to capture both video and audio together. And once you have a system that does that, whether you're doing instructional video, more long-form training, in my case, audiobooks, whatever it is, you can do that easily once you get all the technical things sorted out. Jeffrey Powers, real quick.
I'll add, get yourself a Storyblocks or any of these B-roll stock footage areas, because a lot of times you're just going to need some extra footage ongoing there. If you're doing it live, Wirecast actually has a partnership with Storyblocks. So if you have a license, you can get the B-roll and then you can insert it right into the video as you're talking.
All good advice. It's a big world, but Patricia, welcome to it. And remember, keep watching Office Hours. We talk about this kind of stuff a lot, so we'll help you every time we can. Just ask questions. Next question.
This one's from Funsock Dorji. Can anyone explain the workflow of how to do instant replay using Vinci Resolve from the ISO recordings for a soccer broadcast? I heard Alex talking about it. Thanks.
Yeah, instant replay is its own kind of thing. I know Alex and other people I know use specific systems that allow you to not only record in real time, but access those growing files. That's one of the things you might want to look up on the internet. That is the process where in most cases to record video, you have to have a start and a stop point for that video to be a file you can use somewhere else. Things like video recorder and there are other tools that allow you to kind of chunk up those pieces. So as soon as you get the close of a segment that you want to use for instant replay, these big systems used a ton in like broadcast sports and things like that will sequester that little clip and allow you to access it and bring it back and replay it in almost real time, if not real time. I mean, it's not real time because you're doing it right after something happened, but to isolate exactly the piece you want and do it, somebody's noting to me that DaVinci has a replay component in Resolve, so that's something to look into to see if there's a pathway for that. CJ, do you know more about that?
No, I was just going to mention that the last version of Resolve that came out, Blackmagic did put in, they actually released an instant replay hardware panel and then have some sort of instant replay functionality that's built into Resolve. I know it's new and not a lot of us have tried it yet, myself included. But hopefully when Alex is back on, I don't know if he has experience either, but it's not going to be an EVS, but for people but Blackmagic kind of has a history of taking formerly very exclusive high-end technologies and trying to democratize them and make them a little bit more accessible. So hopefully we can play with that and get back to you on that one.
Yeah, David Brady noted in the chat too that from the horse's mouth, there is a blackmagicdesign.com DaVinci Resolve Replay is a link in their site that I guess explains the new replay function there. So you might want to start there and take a look at that, Funchak. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Gabriela Exceso Mistiera and Suse Marie is asking, Alexander, Mimo Live sounds great, and we want to do things exactly the way you do for your great show with Mitch Hill. What version are you using and how much do you pay for the license? We have student budget for our school project, so no income here.
Well, this is one of those horse's mouth things because Alexander is here. Alexander, tell us what you're doing.
Sure. With Mimo Live, so they do have an education license version of it, but I was just looking at it this morning and it looks like it doesn't have the Zoom integration. So you got to think about what are you actually trying to do? Do you need Zoom participants to be able to come into Mimo Live in order to record and produce your show? I did find out recently, Oliver Breidenbach, friend of the show from Boinks, just announced that they now have a watermarked version that's fully functional. So if it's just for school projects that you're not going to be doing this stuff, live and for clients and stuff like that, it probably doesn't matter as much to have a little watermark on there. So I would highly recommend just using the free watermarked version because you can learn it and it's, fully functional. So that would be how I would start.
Hopefully that helped, Gabriella. Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, how well do plugins like Waves Clarity Vx DeReverb work for removing excessive reverb echo from recorded audio like dialogue?
Alexander, what's your experience been?
I have this plugin. I have the other Clarity suite of plugins like the Vox plugin as well. They work incredibly well. I've historically used the Isotope RX suite in the past, the advanced version that has that deverb module, which is very expensive. This plugin from Waves is a lot less money, and if you just need to remove the sound or minimize the impact of the acoustics of the space, it's a great affordable plugin, and it's always on sale. So I would check it out now and see how much you can get it for. But you can also download the demo. The demo version inserts random silence into it, but it still gives you a good idea of how well it's actually going to work on your audio. So I'm very impressed with the technology. It's working really well for me.
Next question.
Craig McFarland in Boston, Massachusetts. I've been using Quicktime to screen video capture as it is on all systems, but I don't like the screen dimming and only .move output. Any recommendations for screen capture tools to evaluate?
Guy Cochran's got to start us off. Guy?
Yeah, I'd look at ScreenFlow from Telestream. That's a great capture app. If you don't want to pay that much money, you could try the demo of Mimo Live with the watermark and see if that works for you, because it does output H.265 files. So if you're just doing tons and tons of content, like daily content that's an hour long, and you're worried not only about putting it up on YouTube just for employees to view, but you want to archive it forever, that's where having these super small file sizes comes in handy. Because if you're recording, in the olden days, we used to have to use the animation codec, and the files were just massive, and then storing them. I still have some of them on these big drives. So it just depends on that workflow, what you need to do, and how big you want the cursor to be. Do you want things to be like have automated click sounds? Those are things that products that you pay good money for, like the stuff from Telestream will do for you. So I take a look at that product to evaluate.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I would concur with those two suggestions. Camtasia is good. I don't know if they make a Mac version, but it's great on the Windows program for doing screen capture. But you know what I would look at is I used to use these screen capture devices, but if you're trying to demonstrate any software that taxes your computer that you're demonstrating it on, you don't want to have that same computer doing the recording. So record on an external recorder. You could get a Blackmagic Video Assist that could record H.264 files, or as we mentioned earlier, the cheap $100 for archival purposes, the cheap $100 ClearClick gaming recorders. They're designed for gamers who want to record their streaming games and things in H.264 and just mirror your screen output over the HDMI out and plug it right into there and record it directly onto a USB thumb drive. And you can demonstrate your product, include the audio, and they even have a separate audio input on it if you're not sending audio out over the HDMI as well, if you're doing instruction over the top of the screen. And then just set up your computer to have the type of mouse size that you want and any kind of the little features that you want to highlight stuff that you're demonstrating with. It may not, if your computer allows you then to zoom in, you can zoom in and focus on a smaller portion of the screen to get close-ups and stuff. But so I've done a lot of instructional videos that way, just with the outboard recorder, and you don't have to worry about it. It's cross-platform, works with Windows, Mac, iOS, anything that can output HDMI, and it'll record MPEG-4. And they're pretty high resolution and look pretty good, about 5 to 8 megabits per second. They will not record, 444 or QuickTime, uncompressed, non-long GOP recordings, but they won't record ProRes or anything. But for archiving purposes, those little things really work great.
Hopefully that gave you an answer, Craig. I do want to make a note here at the end of the show. Don't forget we have all sorts of things happening on office hours and kind of in our universe around that. Extra Hours takes place on Mondays. Conversations with Tony Mobley comes up on Tuesdays. And today, Thursday, a little bit after the show, The Rundown with David Paskin. So those are all kind of the leading edge of something that we're going to be transitioning more and more into in the next year, which is kind of separate shows that happen for vertical markets. So keep your eyes on all of that. Hopefully, you'll find something there to be interested in, and we appreciate your support and eyeballs as we try to grow office hours into something even more useful than it already might be. Let's go to the next question real quick.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. iOS 18.2 has been out for a few weeks. What does the panel think of this update and any AI features?
CJ, what are your thoughts?
I played with Image Playground, and I found it okay, but it's tough to go to that when you've been using Midjourney. What I really like is the Genmoji, which is when you're going to send someone an emoji, and normally where you would search for an emoji, you just start typing, and then it'll say, "Hey, would you like to create one?" So I wanted to send someone Santa Claus with a camera as kind of as a thing, and what was most interesting about it is it wouldn't just create it. I had to find a person. So when I went into my phone, I needed to find a picture of someone who looked similar to Santa Claus, and all I had was Billy Joel. I was just like a guy with a whiter beard, and so here's Santa with a camera, but with Billy Joel as the inspiration. But once you create that, then you have that going forward. So if you start to make a smattering of little Genmojis, now that's just part of your standard library, and it's pretty fun to text someone.
You
What
too
about
can
me?
become the Piano Man Moji. All right, nice. Alexander Knight.
I'm really enjoying the Chat GPT integration with Siri now. So if you ask a question Siri can't answer it, it'll ask you, do you want to, this is if you have the Chat GPT app installed, it'll ask you if it wants to pull the data from Chat GPT. I just wish it was, I'm finding it a little bit buggy. At first, I would get a verbal response from Siri and it would read me back the response. All of a sudden, a couple days ago, it just stopped doing that. I'll ask Siri a question and I'll get the message on the screen, but I get no verbal response. So it's pretty buggy. But other than that, when it works, it's pretty cool.
As always, thank you all for your questions. We will not get to everything today. If you put them into the standard Mukana system, then they will be sent back to your notes field. If you didn't, if you use the QR codes, they'll stay in our system, and hopefully we'll have time for them tomorrow. That's how the process generically works. Our thanks to everybody who makes Office Hours possible every single day, to the producers, to everybody who asked and inserted a question into the system today. Thank you. You are what drives the show, and your votes on those questions are what sets the run of the show and the order and how long we spend on which topic. The panelists, without people who volunteer to come every day, almost all of whom over the years have had vast amounts of practical industry experience and who come here and share that experience every day and try to do nothing more than just help people solve problems. Thank you, panelists, one and all, and to our amazing back-end crew, dispersed all over this globe to more corners of the world than you can imagine, who take their time, whichever time zone they're in, early morning sometimes, midday, late at night, to help us operate this virtual community and make sure that the show can go out every day. Thank you. A deep thank you to all of those constituencies. The Telect Traversal today, if we'd had to fly around next to Santa in his sleigh, as he does, he has the best workflow for that, we would have had to go 37,000 miles. That's 59,000 kilometers, or 291 million bananas for scale. Thank you for being with us today, and we will see you here tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Thanks for watching. Bye. Well done, panelists. Another good day.
Ho, ho, ho.
The hollow days.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right, then.
Have a good one. See ya.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes,
Drive
boys
safe.
and girls.